The drone camera zoomed in on her face. Karen froze. In her hands, $50,000 in cash that belonged to our community. She looked up at the sky, and I pressed record. This was the moment that would bring her down. My name is Barbara, and I've been the HOA President of Metabrook community for the past 3 years. I love this job. I love helping our neighbors, organizing events, and making sure our community thrives. But tonight, as I sat in my office at 9:45 p.m., staring at our financial statements, something felt terribly wrong. The numbers didn't add up. Our community pool renovation fund had $23,000 in March. By April, it should have grown to $38,000 with the quarterly dues. Instead, the balance showed only $18,000. $20,000 had simply vanished. I rubbed my eyes behind my red glasses and checked again. Maybe I made a mistake. Maybe I was just tired. But no matter how many times I recalculated, the answer remained the same. Money was missing. I started going through every transaction from the past 6 months. Payments to landscaping companies I'd never heard of. Checks written to contractors who never did any work in our community. Invoices for repairs that never happened. Every single fraudulent transaction had one signature on the approval line. Karen Mitchell, our former treasurer. Karen had been treasurer for 5 years before I became president. She was always perfectly dressed, always smiling, always the first to volunteer for community events. Everyone loved her. When she stepped down as treasurer last year, claiming she needed more time for her consulting business, we threw her a retirement party. I even gave a speech about her dedicated service. Now, I understood why she left so suddenly. She knew I'd eventually discover what she'd been doing. The next morning, I called Karen and asked to meet for coffee. I needed to hear her explanation before taking this to the board or the police. Karen arrived 15 minutes late, wearing a designer dress that probably cost more than my monthly salary and jewelry that sparkled under the cafe lights. She hugged me warmly, as if we were still friends. "Barbara, so wonderful to see you. What's this about?" I slid the financial statements across the table. "Karen, I need you to explain these transactions. 27 payments to companies that don't exist. $53,000 missing from our community funds." Her smile never wavered. "Oh, Barbara, you're new to this. Those are legitimate expenses from my time as treasurer. Sometimes we have to use vendors that aren't in our usual rotation. Everything was approved by the board at the time." I checked the board minutes. None of these were approved. Karen's smile finally cracked, just slightly. "Then you checked wrong. I kept impeccable records. If you're suggesting I did something improper, you're mistaken. And frankly, it's offensive." She stood up, grabbed her designer purse, and looked down at me. "Be careful, Barbara. False accusations can destroy reputations, yours included." She walked out, leaving me with the check. Karen's threats didn't scare me. It made me more determined. That evening, I sat on my couch with my laptop and started investigating. I called every vendor on Karen's invoices. 3 companies had gone out of business to claim that they never worked with our HOA. 4 had addresses that led to empty lots or abandoned buildings. I found Karen's social media profiles. For someone who claimed she left the treasurer position to focus on her consulting business, she wasn't doing much consulting. Instead, her photos showed luxury vacations to Bali, Paris, and the Maldives. A new Mercedes in her driveway, a swimming pool that hadn't existed 2 years ago, all funded by our community's money. I needed proof. Real, undeniable proof. Karen had covered her tracks perfectly in the official records, but I knew she was still doing something with that money. People who steal don't just stop. They get bolder. That's when I remembered my nephew's birthday gift to me last Christmas. A professional-grade drone with a high-definition camera. I spent the entire weekend learning how to operate the drone. My nephew, Tyler, gave me a 2-hour tutorial over video call. "Aunt Barbara, why do you suddenly want to learn drone photography?" he asked, laughing. "Let's just say I need to document some community issues from new perspectives," I replied. By Sunday evening, I could fly the drone smoothly, control the camera, and record high-quality video. I practiced following moving cars, zooming in on specific details, and flying at night using the infrared camera mode. I felt ridiculous. A 52-year-old HOA president learning to be a spy. But Karen had stolen from our community, from families saving for their children's education, from retirees on fixed incomes, from young couples trying to build their lives. She wasn't going to get away with it. Monday morning at 6 a.m., I drove to Karen's neighborhood. She lived 4 miles from Metabrook community, in an exclusive area called Riverside Estates. I parked 3 blocks away and launched the drone. The drone rose smoothly, and I guided it toward Karen's address. Through the camera, I saw her house clearly. It was massive, easily worth $1.2 million. The new pool sparkled in the early morning light. Professional landscaping surrounded the property. 3 luxury cars sat in the circular driveway. All of this, I was certain, paid for with stolen community funds. I recorded everything, but it wasn't proof of current theft. It just showed she had money. I needed to catch her in the act. At 7:35 a.m., Karen emerged from her house. She wore a business suit and carried a briefcase. She got into her Mercedes and drove away. I followed in my car, keeping the drone high enough to remain undetected. Karen drove to a strip mall and parked behind a building supply company. She waited in her car for 12 minutes. Then a white van pulled up next to her. I maneuvered the drone closer, keeping it behind a billboard for cover. Through the zoom camera, I watched Karen get out of her Mercedes and approach the van. A man in construction clothes stepped out. They talked for several minutes. Then Karen opened her trunk. Inside were boxers. Not just any boxers. I zoomed the camera in further. Bank deposit boxers, the kind businesses use for cash. Karen handed 3 boxers to the construction worker. Eopanedwan counted through stacks of bills and nodded. They shook hands. He loaded the boxers into his van and drove away. Karen checked her watch, smiled to herself, and got back in her Mercedes. I had it. I had video evidence of Karen conducting a suspicious cash transaction. But what was she buying? What was she paying for? I spent Monday evening reviewing the drone footage frame by frame. I managed to capture the van's license plate number, 7 Mike Charlie 3928. I called my friend Rachel, who works at the DMV. Rachel, I need a favor. Can you look up a license plate for me? Barbara, you know I can't do that officially. That's private information. I know. But this is important. Really important. Someone's stealing from our community, and I need to track them down Rochelle's side. Give me the number. I'll see what I can do unofficially. 20 minutes later, she called back. The van is registered to a company called Premier Construction Solutions. They're licensed contractors based downtown. Premier Construction Solutions. I wrote the name down. Then I searched for them in our HOA records. They weren't there. We'd never hired them. But Karen had paid them $47,000 according to the fraudulent invoices I'd found. I pulled up Karen's social media again and looked at her photos with new eyes. Her Bali vacation in June happened right after a $15,000 payment to Premier Construction. Her new Mercedes appeared in August, following a $22,000 check to the same company. Karen wasn't paying for construction. She was laundering money. She'd write fraudulent checks to this company. They'd cash them and give her the money in person, probably keeping a percentage as their fee. It was brilliant and completely illegal. Over the next week, I followed Karen 3 more times with the drone. Every Tuesday and Friday morning, she met the same van in the same location. Every time, she handed over boxers from her trunk. Every time, the pattern repeated. I recorded everything. I documented dates, times, and amounts visible in the footage. I created a comprehensive file showing Karen's pattern of theft and money laundering. But I needed one more piece of evidence. I needed to prove the money in those boxers came from our HOA accounts. I made an appointment with our HOA's bank manager, Mr. Peterson. I brought all my documentation and the drone footage. Mr. Peterson, I need to request detailed records of all cash withdrawals from our HOA accounts over the past 18 months. He pulled up the records, and his face went pale. Mrs. Barbara, There are 53 cash withdrawals here, totaling $187,000, all signed by Karen Mitchell when she was treasurer, $187,000. I felt dizzy. It was so much worse than I thought. This wasn't just embezzlement. This was systematic theft over more than a year and a half. Can you print those records for me? I asked quietly. I can. But Mrs. Barbara, if you suspect fraud, you need to contact the police immediately. I just need to make sure I have everything first. That Wednesday, I called an emergency board meeting. I didn't tell anyone what it was about. I just said we had urgent financial matters to discuss. All 7 board members showed up. Margaret, Thomas, David, Lisa, Robert, Jennifer, and myself. I'd prepared a presentation with all my evidence. But before I could start, Lisa spoke up. Barbara, before we begin, I want to address something. Karen Mitchell called me yesterday. She said you've been harassing her with false accusations of theft. My stomach dropped. Karen was getting ahead of the story. She said, you've been following her, spying on her, and making wild claims about missing money. Lisa continued. She's considering legal action against you and the HOA for defamation. Margaret nodded. I received a similar call. Barbara, what's going on? Karen served this community faithfully for 5 years. I took a deep breath and opened my laptop. I'm glad everyone's here, because what I'm about to show you is going to change everything you think you know about Karen Mitchell. I started the presentation. I showed them the financial discrepancies, the fake companies, the missing $187,000 in cash withdrawals, the drone footage of Karen's repeated meetings with Premier Construction, the bank records showing the pattern. The room was silent. Jennifer had her hand over her mouth. Thomas looked furious. Margaret was shaking her head in disbelief. This is impossible, David finally said. Karen wouldn't do this. There has to be an explanation. There is an explanation, I replied. Karen has been stealing from our community for 18 months. She's been laundering the money through a construction company that never did any work for us. And when I started investigating, she tried to threaten me into silence. Robert leaned forward. Barbara, this is serious. If you're right, this is a police matter. But if you're wrong, Karen could sue us for everything we have. I know, I said. That's why I made sure I was right before bringing it to you. We need to vote, Thomas said. All in favor of turning this evidence over to the police and pressing charges against Karen Mitchell. 6 hands went up immediately. Lisa hesitated, then slowly raised hers. Unanimous, I said. I'll contact the police tomorrow morning. As everyone packed up to leave, Margaret approached me. She put her hand on my shoulder. Barbara, I'm sorry we doubted you. What you did took incredible courage. Thank you for protecting our community. I nodded, but I didn't feel courageous. I felt exhausted, and I knew the hardest part was still coming. Karen wasn't going to go down without a fight. The next morning, I woke up to 17 missed calls and 34 text messages. My phone wouldn't stop ringing. When I finally answered, it was Thomas from the board. Barbara, you need to see this right now. Karen posted something on the community Facebook page an hour ago. I opened Facebook with shaking hands. Karen's post had already been shared 43 times and had over 200 comments. The post showed a photo of me flying the drone near her house. Below it she'd written, Alert. Barbara Harris has been stalking me for weeks. She's been flying a drone over my private property, following me around town, and making false accusations about my time as treasurer. She's having some kind of mental breakdown and I fear for my safety. I've filed for a restraining order, and I'm urging all residents to demand her immediate resignation. As HOA President, she is dangerous and unstable. The comments below were split. Half the community was defending me. The other half was calling for my resignation. My phone rang again. It was Detective Sarah Martinez from the police department. Ms. This is Detective Martinez. I understand you wanted to file a fraud report. Well, I need to inform you that Karen Mitchell has already filed multiple complaints against you for stalking, harassment, and invasion of privacy. We need you to come down to the station immediately." I stared at the phone in disbelief. Karen had turned the tables. Now I was the one who looked like the criminal. "Have you ever caught someone stealing? Or has someone ever falsely accused you of something? Tell me in the comments what happened." I sat in the cold interrogation room at the police station, my hands folded on the metal table. Detective Sarah Martinez sat across from me, reviewing the complaints Karen had filed. "Ms. Harris, according to Ms. Mitchell, you've been stalking her for 2 weeks, flying a drone over her private property, following her in your vehicle, harassing her with accusations of theft." Detective Martinez looked up from the papers. "These are serious allegations." "Detective, I can explain everything," I said. "But first, I need you to look at the evidence I brought. Karen Mitchell has stolen $187,000 from our community over 18 months. I pulled out my laptop and opened the folder with all my documentation. I have bank records, fraudulent invoices, and video evidence of her laundering money through a fake construction company." Detective Martinez raised her eyebrows. "Video evidence?" "Yes. From the drone she's accusing me of using to stalk her. I was conducting surveillance because she covered her tracks so well that I needed proof of her current criminal activity, not just historical theft." Detective Martinez spent 45 minutes reviewing everything. She watched the drone footage 3 times. She examined the bank records. She read through the fake invoices. Finally, she sat back in her chair. "Ms. Harris, this is compelling evidence. But I have to be honest with you. The way you obtained this evidence could be problematic." My heart sank. "What do you mean?" "You flew a drone over Ms. Mitchell's private property multiple times. You followed her without her knowledge. Depending on how a prosecutor views this, it could be considered stalking or invasion of privacy, even if you had good intentions." "But she stole from our community." "I believe you, and we're going to investigate her. But you need to understand that your methods put you at legal risk too." Detective Martinez closed my laptop. "Here's what's going to happen. I'm going to open an investigation into Ms. Mitchell for embezzlement and fraud. But I'm also going to recommend that you stop all surveillance activities immediately. No more drone flights, no more following her. Let us handle it from here." I left the police station feeling frustrated and exhausted. When I checked my phone, Karen's Facebook post had exploded. 372 comments. The neighborhood was at war. Some residents defended me. Barbara has always been honest and transparent. If she's investigating Karen, there's a good reason. I always thought Karen's lifestyle was suspicious for someone on a treasurer's salary. Let's wait for the facts before we judge Barbara. But others attacked me viciously. Barbara is clearly having a mental breakdown. She needs to resign immediately. Flying drones over someone's house is illegal. Karen should sue her. I always knew Barbara was power-hungry. This proves it. Karen herself was commenting frequently, playing the victim perfectly. Thank you all for your support. This has been so traumatic. I served this community faithfully for 5 years, and this is how I'm treated. I just want peace. By Thursday evening, the community Facebook group had organized an emergency town hall meeting. 400 residents showed up at our community center. The room was packed. People were standing in the aisles. The energy was hostile. I sat at the front table with the other board members. Karen sat in the front row, surrounded by her supporters, looking dignified and wounded. The meeting was called to order by Thomas, our board vice president. "We're here tonight to address the allegations between our current president, Barbara Harris, and our former treasurer, Karen Mitchell." "Barbara, would you like to speak first?" I stood up. My hands were shaking. I could feel hundreds of eyes on me. "Thank you for coming tonight. I know many of you are confused and angry. 2 weeks ago, I discovered significant financial discrepancies in our HOA accounts. Money was missing. After investigating, I found evidence that Karen Mitchell embezzled $187,000 over 18 months. The room erupted. People were shouting. Karen's supporters were booing. Her friends were yelling, "Liar!" and "Prove it." Karen stood up from her seat, tears streaming down her face. "How dare you?" she said. her voice breaking. "How dare you stand there and destroy my reputation with these lies? I gave 5 years of my life to this community. I balanced every penny. I documented everything. And now you're accusing me of being a thief because you're incompetent and can't understand basic accounting." The crowd roared with mixed reactions. Half were applauding Karen. Half were shouting at her to sit down. "I didn't want to do this publicly," Karen continued, pulling out her phone. "But you forced my hand, Barbara. I have proof that you've been stealing from the community. Check your email. All of you. I just sent documentation showing that Barbara has been writing unauthorized checks to herself for the past 6 months. My blood ran cold." What was she talking about? People around the room started checking their phones. Whispers spread like wildfire. Thomas grabbed my arm. "Barbara, what is she talking about?" Margaret showed me her phone. Karen had sent an email to the entire community with attached bank statements. They showed 6 checks made out to Barbara Harris over the past 6 months, totaling $32,000. Each check had a signature that looked like mine. "These are fake," I said immediately. "I never wrote these checks. I never received this money." "Of course you'd say that," Karen shouted. "Just like you accused me. But unlike you, I have proof. Those bank statements are official records. Your signature is on every check. You stole $32,000 and then tried to frame me to cover your own theft." The room was in chaos. People were yelling. Some were demanding my resignation. Others were demanding both Karen and I be investigated. "Everyone, please!" Thomas shouted. "We need order!" But there was no order. The meeting descended into complete chaos. People were arguing with their neighbors. Longtime friends were shouting at each other. The community was being torn apart. That night, I worked until 3 a.m. I called our bank manager, Mr. Peterson, on his personal cell phone. "Mr. Peterson, I'm so sorry to call you this late, but Karen Mitchell just publicly accused me of embezzling $32,000. She showed bank statements with my signature on 6 checks made out to myself. I never wrote those checks. I need you to verify this with the bank immediately." "I'll check first thing tomorrow morning," he promised. "But Ms. Harris, I've handled your accounts for 3 years. Those statements don't look right to me. The formatting is off. The account numbers don't match our current system. I think they're forgeries. Can you prove that?" "I'll pull the official records. If those checks don't exist in our system, then Karen created fake documents. That's fraud on top of embezzlement." Friday morning, Detective Martinez called me. "Ms. Harris, I've been reviewing the evidence you provided. I also obtained a warrant for Karen Mitchell's financial records. What we're finding is consistent with your allegations." "What about the fake checks she accused me of writing?" "I spoke with your bank. Those documents are forgeries. Karen created fake bank statements to discredit you. We're adding document fraud to the charges." I felt a wave of relief. "So you believe me?" "The evidence speaks for itself. We're building a case against Ms. Mitchell. But I need you to do something for me. I need you to keep flying that drone." I was confused. "What? You told me to stop all surveillance." That was before she escalated with the fake documents. "Now I need you to work with us. We're going to set up a sting operation. Next Tuesday, when Karen meets with Premier Construction again, we'll be waiting. But we need your drone footage to coordinate the timing. Are you willing to help?" "Absolutely." Monday afternoon, I met with Detective Martinez and 2 other officers at the police station. They had a map of the strip mall where Karen conducted her money drops spread across the table. "Karen follows a pattern," Detective Martinez explained. "Every Tuesday and Friday at 7:45 a.m., she meets the van behind this building supply company. The exchange takes approximately 8 minutes. Here's how we're going to do this." She pointed to different locations on the map. "We'll have 3 unmarked vehicles positioned here, here, and here. When Karen arrives, you'll fly the drone to confirm she has the cash boxers in her trunk. Once we confirm that, we move in and make the arrest." "What about the construction company?" I asked. "We've been investigating Premier Construction Solutions. They're a shell company specifically created for money laundering. The owner, Rick Davidson, has 2 prior convictions for fraud. We'll arrest him simultaneously. Officer Chun spoke up. Ms. Harris, I have to warn you, if Karen spots the drone on Tuesday, she might flee or abort the meeting. You need to keep it at a high altitude until we give you the signal to move in for close-up footage. I understand, I said. I've been practicing high-altitude surveillance. She won't see it. Saturday and Sunday, I practiced drone operation obsessively. I went to an empty park at dawn and flew practice runs, simulating Tuesday's sting operation. I practiced keeping the drone at high altitude, zooming in from a distance, and quickly repositioning for different angles. My phone kept buzzing with messages from the community Facebook group. The war between my supporters and Karen's supporters had intensified. Some residents were calling for both of us to resign. Others were demanding an independent forensic audit. Karen posted daily updates about how traumatized she was by my stalking and false accusations. She shared photos of herself looking exhausted and stressed. She claimed she couldn't sleep. She said she was afraid to leave her house. It was a masterful performance, and half the community believed every word. By Monday, the community had completely fractured. My neighbors who believed me started wearing blue ribbons in support. Karen's supporters wore red ribbons. People who had been friends for years weren't speaking to each other. The community pool was closed because volunteers refused to work together. The neighborhood watch program fell apart because blue ribbon and red ribbon members couldn't cooperate. Even the children's playground became contested territory. Margaret called me Monday evening. Barbara, regardless of what happens Tuesday, I don't know if our community can recover from this. We're destroyed. Families are fighting. The Facebook group is toxic. People are talking about moving away. If Karen is arrested tomorrow, people will understand I was telling the truth. Maybe they'll say you drove her to desperate actions, or that the police are wrong. Barbara, some people will never believe the truth, even when it's proven. Tuesday morning, I arrived at my surveillance position at 6:15 a.m. 3 unmarked police vehicles were already in place. Detective Martinez was parked a rows away from me. She gave me a thumbs up through her windshield. My hands were sweating on the drone controller. Everything depended on the next 2 hours. At 7:38 a.m., Karen's Mercedes pulled into the strip mall parking lot. She parked in her usual spot behind the building supply company. Drone launch confirmed, I whispered into my phone, which was connected to Detective Martinez. Target vehicle in position. I flew the drone up to 300 feet, keeping it directly above Karen's location. Through the camera, I watched her sit in her car, checking her phone. At 7:42 a.m., the white van arrived. Van is here, I reported. She's getting out of her vehicle. Through the drone camera, I watched Karen step out of her Mercedes. She looked around carefully, then opened her trunk. 3 bank deposit boxes were stacked inside. Rick Davidson, the construction company owner, got out of his van. They talked for a moment. Karen was gesturing, looking agitated. Something was different today. Usually these exchanges were calm and quick. Detective, something's wrong, I said. Karen looks nervous. She keeps looking around. Hold position. We're watching. Karen pulled out her phone and showed something to Rick. He shook his head and backed away from the Mercedes. They were arguing. Detective, the exchange isn't happening. They're arguing about something. Then Karen did something that made my blood run cold. She looked up at the sky. She shaded her eyes with her hand and scanned the horizon. She was looking for the drone. Detective, she knows. She's looking for surveillance. Hold your position. Do not move the drone. But it was too late. Karen spotted it. Even at 300 feet, she saw the small black shape hovering above her. She pointed at it and shouted something to Rick. Rick jumped in his van and started the engine. They're running, I shouted. Van is fleeing southbound. All units move in. Now. Detective Martinez's voice crackled through my phone. 2 police vehicles blocked the van's exit. Rick slammed on his brakes and was surrounded within seconds. 4 officers had him on the ground in handcuffs before he could react. Karen tried to get back in her Mercedes, but Detective Martinez's vehicle blocked her in. Karen stood frozen next to her car, her trunk still open, the boxers of cash clearly visible. Karen Michelle, you're under arrest for embezzlement, fraud, money laundering, and forgery, Detective Martinez announced as she approached. Put your hands behind your back. This is a setup. Karen screamed. Barbara Harris set me up. She's framing me. Ma'am, we have 18 months of bank records showing systematic theft. We have video evidence of multiple cash exchanges. We have the fake documents you created. And we have 3 boxers of cash in your trunk right now. Put your hands behind your back. I landed the drone and ran across the parking lot. I had to see this. I had to see Karen finally face justice. As Detective Martinez handcuffed Karen, Karen's eyes found mine. The look she gave me was pure hatred. You think this is over? Karen hissed. You have no idea what you've done. You have Nirajam and Oxide idea who you're dealing with. It's over, Karen, I said. You're done. Karen laughed. It was a cold, bitter sound. I'm not the only one who's been stealing from the community, Barbara. There are others. And when they find out you exposed me, they're going to come after you next. This is just the beginning. Detective Martinez pushed Karen toward the police car. Let's go. As they drove away, I stood in the parking lot, Karen's words echoing in my mind. There are others. What did she mean? Were there more people stealing from our community? Was this bigger than just Karen? My phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. You made a big mistake today. Karen was just the tip of the iceberg. We know where you live. We know your routine. Stop investigating, or you'll regret it. This is your only warning. I stared at the message, my hands shaking. What had I gotten myself into? Do you think Barbara should keep investigating despite the threats? Or should she stop while she's ahead? Tell me what you would do in the comments. I stared at the threatening text message for the 3rd time that evening. We know where you live. We know your routine. Stop investigating or you'll regret it. Karen had been arrested 6 hours ago, but apparently she wasn't working alone. Someone else was involved in the theft. Maybe multiple people. I forwarded the message to Detective Martinez and called her immediately. Detective, I just received a threat, an anonymous text warning me to stop investigating. Karen said something during her arrest about others being involved. What did she mean? Detective Martinez sighed. We interrogated Karen for 3 hours this afternoon. She's not talking. She lawyered up immediately, but based on the volume of money stolen, we suspect she had help. $187,000 is a lot to move without anyone noticing. Someone else in the community likely knew what she was doing. Do you think I'm in danger? I'm sending a patrol car to your house tonight. We'll have officers drive by regularly. But Barbara, you need to be careful. If there are other people involved, they're going to be desperate now that Karen's been caught. By Wednesday morning, news of Karen's arrest had spread throughout the entire community. The local news had picked up the story. Former HOA treasurer arrested for embezzling. Nearly $200,000 was the headline on every local website. The community Facebook group exploded with over 800 comments overnight. Some people who had defended Karen were apologizing to me. Others were still insisting she was innocent and had been framed. But the most interesting comments came from residents who suddenly had information to share. I always wondered how Karen afforded that new pool. Now we know. Karen tried to recruit me to approve fake invoices 2 years ago. I've reported it to the board, but nothing happened. My husband's construction company submitted a legitimate bid for HOA work 3 years ago. Karen rejected it and gave the contract to a company that didn't exist. We should have said something. People had suspected Karen for years, but nobody spoke up. Nobody wanted to cause trouble. Nobody wanted to believe their neighbor was a criminal. Thursday evening, the board held an emergency meeting to assess the financial damage. Our accountant, Mr. Reynolds, had spent 2 days analyzing every transaction Karen had made during her 5 years as treasurer. The total theft is actually higher than we initially thought, Mr. Reynolds announced grimly. Karen didn't just steal $187,000. She also manipulated our reserve fund accounts. The real total is $234,000. The room went silent. $234,000. It was devastating. Margaret spoke first. Can we recover any of it? Karen's house, her cars, her assets will be seized, Detective Martinez explained. She had joined our meeting as a courtesy. But she's already spent a significant amount. You might recover $100,000 if you're lucky. The rest is gone. Thomas shook his head. This means we'll have to raise HOA dues by 40% just to rebuild our reserves. Families are going to struggle. Some might have to sell their homes. I felt sick. Karen's theft wasn't just numbers on a spreadsheet. It was real families facing real financial hardship. Friday afternoon, I found a manila envelope taped to my front door. No return address. No postage. Someone had hand-delivered it. Inside were copies of financial documents I'd never seen before. HOA bank statements from 7 years ago, before Karen was treasurer. Before I was president, the statements showed similar patterns of theft. Fake vendors, suspicious cash withdrawals, money disappearing into accounts that didn't exist. But these transactions weren't signed by Karen. They were signed by someone named Richard Chun, our HOA treasurer from 7 years ago. A note was paper-clipped to the documents. You exposed Karen? Good, but she wasn't the first. Richard Chun stole $300,000 before her, and there have been others. The corruption in Metabrook community goes back 15 years. If you want to know the truth, meet me at Riverside Park tomorrow at 10 a.m. Come alone. Tell no one. I'm risking everything to help you. I stayed up until 2 a.m. researching Richard Chun. He had been HOA treasurer from 2018 to 2020. He resigned suddenly, claiming family health issues. 2 months later, he moved to Arizona. I found his social media profiles. He lived in a mansion in Scottsdale. He owned 3 luxury cars. He posted photos from exotic vacations twice a month. All of this on what should have been a modest retirement income. Richard Chun had definitely stolen from our community. And if the anonymous note was correct, there were others between him and Karen. But who sent me these documents? Who wanted me to know the truth? And why did they want to meet in person? Despite the note's warning to come alone, I called Detective Martinez Saturday morning. Detective, I received anonymous documents yesterday. They showed that Karen wasn't the first treasurer to steal from our community. Someone named Richard Chun embezzled $300,000 7 years ago. And someone sent you proof of this? Yes. With a note asking me to meet them today at 10 a.m. in Riverside Park. Alone? Absolutely not. You are not going to that meeting alone. This could be a trap. Whoever sent those documents might be involved in the theft themselves. Or they might be someone who knows the truth and wants to help. Detective Martinez was quiet for a moment. Here's what we're going to do. You'll go to the meeting, but I'll have undercover officers positioned throughout the park. If anything goes wrong, we'll be there in seconds. At 9:55 a.m., I sat on a bench near the pond at Riverside Park. My hands were sweating. I knew Detective Martinez had officers hidden throughout the park, but I still felt exposed and vulnerable. At exactly 10 a.m., someone sat down next to me. I turned and gasped. It was Gerald Thompson, a 73-year-old retired accountant who had lived in Metabrook community for 28 years. He was on the HOA board during Richard Chun's time as treasurer. Mr. Thompson, you sent me the documents? I did, he said quietly, not looking at me. He kept his eyes on the pond. I should have done this years ago. But I was afraid. I'm still afraid. But after what you did, exposing Karen, I realized someone needs to tell the truth. I knew Richard Chun was stealing, Gerald said. I was on the board. I saw the fake invoices. I saw the suspicious transactions. But Richard threatened me. He said if I reported him, he'd make sure everyone knew about my past bankruptcy. He said he'd ruin what was left of my reputation. So you stayed silent? Gerald nodded, shame evident on his face. I stayed silent, and Richard stole $300,000. When he left, I thought it was over. But then Karen became treasurer, and I started seeing the same patterns. The same fake vendors. The same suspicious cash withdrawals. Did you know Karen was working with Richard? I don't think she was. Not at first. I think Karen discovered what Richard had done and realized she could do the same thing. She used his playbook, but then something changed about 2 years ago. Karen started meeting with someone else from the community. They were planning something bigger. Gerald pulled out 3 photographs from his jacket. They were slightly blurry, taken from a distance with a phone camera. I took these pictures 18 months ago. I was at the community center late one evening for a board meeting. When I went to my car, I saw Karen meeting with these 2 people in the parking lot. I looked at the photos. Karen was clearly visible. The other 2 people were partially hidden in shadows, but I could make out their faces. My blood ran cold. One was Daniel Morrison, our current HOA vice treasurer. The other was Patricia Rodriguez, who managed our community's maintenance budget. Daniel and Patricia are involved. I believe so. After I saw this meeting, I started watching our financial records more carefully. I noticed Daniel approving unusual expenses, Patricia authorizing maintenance work that never happened. They're using the same methods Richard and Karen used. How much have they stolen? Primera. Asked. I estimate at least $150,000 over the past 18 months. Maybe more. Barbara, the total theft from Metabrook community over the past 15 years is probably close to $700,000, almost $750,000. Our community should be wealthy. Instead, we're broke. I felt dizzy. $700,000. Multiple people involved. A conspiracy that had been running for 15 years. Why didn't you report this? Primera. Asked. Why wait until now? Gerald's voice cracked. Because I'm a coward. I was afraid of what they'd do to me. Afraid of losing my home. Afraid of being targeted. But when I saw you stand up to Karen, even when the whole community turned against you, I realized I couldn't stay silent anymore. You risked everything to expose the truth. The least I can do is help you. Gerald gave me copies of everything he'd collected over the years. Bank records, photos, notes documenting suspicious transactions. I immediately took it all to Detective Martinez. She spread the evidence across her desk and examined it carefully. This is substantial. If what Gerald says is true, we have multiple people involved in organized theft. This isn't just embezzlement anymore. This is conspiracy and organized fraud. What do we do? I asked. We investigate Daniel Morrison and Patricia Rodriguez carefully. We can't arrest them based on old photos and suspicions. We need current evidence of active theft. Can you get me access to the most recent financial records? I'm the HOA President. I have access to everything. Could pull every transaction Daniel and Patricia have authorized in the past 6 months. Every invoice. Every expense. Report. Every check. We're going to find the proof. I spent the entire weekend reviewing financial records. Every transaction Daniel had approved as vice treasurer. Every maintenance expense Patricia had authorized. The patterns were obvious once I knew what to look for. Daniel had approved payment to a landscaping company called Greenscape Solutions. We didn't use that company, Primera Cayed them. They'd never heard of Metabrook community. Patricia had authorized $32,000 for emergency HVAC repairs in the community center. I checked the maintenance logs. No HVAC work had been done in 18 months. They were stealing actively. Right now, even after Karen's arrest, they continued operating as if nothing had happened. Monday evening, we had our regular board meeting. Daniel and Patricia both attended as usual, acting completely normal. They even expressed sympathy about Karen's arrest and offered to help rebuild the community's finances. I waited until the end of the meeting. Then I stood up and locked the conference room door. Before anyone leaves, there's something we need to discuss. Daniel, Patricia, I have some questions about recent transactions you've authorized. Daniel's face went pale. Patricia's hand gripped the edge of the table. "What kind of questions?" Daniel asked carefully. I pulled up my laptop and displayed the fraudulent transactions on the projector screen. "Can you explain these payments to companies that don't exist? Can you explain maintenance work that was never performed? Can you explain why you're using the exact same methods Karen Mitchell used to steal from our community?" Patricia stood up abruptly. "I don't have to listen to this. You're on a witch hunt. Barbara, first Karen, now us. You're paranoid and out of control." "Sit down, Patricia. The police are on their way. Detective Martinez has been investigating you for 3 days. She has warrants for your financial records. She knows everything." That was a bluff. Detective Martinez didn't have warrants yet, but I needed them to react. I needed them to give themselves away. Daniel grabbed his jacket. "I'm leaving." "You can't keep us here." "Actually, I can," I said. "I notified building security before the meeting. They're positioned outside all exits. The police will be here in 5 minutes. You can wait here calmly, or you can run and make this worse for yourselves." Patricia started crying. It was Daniel's idea. He said it was easy money. He said nobody would notice. I didn't want to do it, but I needed money for my mother's medical bills. I was desperate. "Patricia, shut up," Daniel hissed. But Patricia kept talking. "Karen taught us how to do it. She showed us which vendors to create, how to forge invoices, how to move the money. She said she'd been doing it for years and never got caught. She made it seem so safe." "How much have you taken?" "Primera. Husk it. I don't know exactly. Maybe 160,000 over 2 years. Maybe more. I stopped counting. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." The conference room door opened. Detective Martinez walked in with 4 uniformed officers. "Daniel Morrison, Patricia Rodriguez, you're under arrest for embezzlement, fraud, and conspiracy." As the officers handcuffed them, Daniel looked at me with pure hatred. "You think you've won? You think this is over? You have no idea how deep this goes. We weren't working alone. There are people above us. Important people. People with real power. And they're not going to let you destroy what they've built." "Who?" I demanded. "Who else is involved?" Daniel smiled coldly as the officers led him away. "You'll find out soon enough. And when you do, you're going to wish you'd stayed out of this." After they were gone, Detective Martinez turned to me. "Barbara, what did he mean by people above them? Who could be more important than board members?" I thought about the community, about who had the most power, about who could have been orchestrating this theft for 15 years without being caught. Then it hit me. There was one person who had access to everything. One person who had been with Metabrook community since the beginning. One person everyone trusted completely. "Detective, I think I know who's behind all of this. But you're not going to believe me. Try me. It's Philip Hartford, the property management company owner, the man who's managed Metabrook community for 23 years. He's the one who's been running this entire operation." Detective Martinez stared at me. "Philip Hartford is one of the most respected property managers in the state. He manages 47 HOA communities. If he's corrupt, this isn't just about Metabrook anymore. This could be a multi-million-dollar conspiracy affecting thousands of families." My phone buzzed. Another anonymous text. "You're getting close to the truth. Philip knows you suspect him. He's planning to destroy all evidence tomorrow morning. You have less than 12 hours to stop him. Meet me tonight at midnight. I have proof. Same park. Last chance." I showed the message to Detective Martinez. "This is a trap," she said. "It has to be. Maybe. But what if it's not? What if someone really does have proof against Philip Hartford? We need to take that chance. Then we're going together. And this time we're bringing a full tactical team." Do you think Philip Hartford is the mastermind? Or is this another twist? Who do you think sent that text message? Share your theories in the comments. At 11:55 p.m., I walked into Riverside Park for the second time. This time, Detective Martinez and 12 tactical officers surrounded the area, hidden in the darkness. My phone buzzed. A text from the unknown number. Barbara, look up. I looked up at the sky. A drone hovered above me, its camera light blinking red. The drone is watching you, the text continued. I needed to make sure you came alone. You didn't. I can see the police, but that's okay. You'll need them for what comes next. A figure emerged from the darkness near the pond, but it wasn't another anonymous informant. It was Philip Hartford himself, the property management company owner, the man we suspected of masterminding the entire conspiracy. He walked calmly toward me, his hands raised to show he wasn't armed. "Don't shoot!" Philip called out to the hidden police officers. "I'm unarmed. I'm here to confess." Detective Martinez stepped out from behind a tree, her weapon drawn. "Philip Hartford, stay where you are." Philip stopped walking. He looked directly at me. "Barbara, you were right. I've been running this operation for 23 years. Karen, Richard Chun, Daniel, Patricia, and 6 others before them. All working for me, all stealing under my direction." "Why?" I asked. "Why steal from families? From your own clients?" Philip smiled sadly. "Greed. Simple greed. I started small, 23 years ago. Just a few thousand here and there. Nobody noticed. So I got bolder. I recruited treasurers who were desperate or greedy. I taught them how to steal. I took 70% of everything they stole. They kept 30%. How much total? From Metabrook alone. $900,000 over 23 years. But I don't just manage Metabrook. I manage 47 communities. The total across all of them is approximately $11 million. The number was staggering. $11 million stolen from thousands of families. "Why confess?" Detective Martinez demanded. "Why not run?" "Because I'm dying," Philip said quietly. "Stage 4, pancreatic cancer. The doctors give me 3 months. Maybe 4. I could run, hide, die in some foreign country with my stolen millions. But I have grandchildren, 4 beautiful grandchildren. And I realized they're going to grow up knowing their grandfather was a criminal, a thief, a monster who stole from families." He pulled out a USB drive from his pocket. "This contains everything. 23 years of records. Every theft, every fake invoice, every person I recruited, every community I stole from. Bank account numbers, where the money is hidden. All of it." Detective Martinez took the USB drive carefully. "Philip Hartford, you're under arrest for organized fraud, embezzlement, conspiracy, and racketeering." As officers handcuffed him, Philip looked at me one last time. "Barbara, you did what 47 HOA boards failed to do for 23 years. You asked questions. You didn't accept easy answers. You risked everything to find the truth. I'm sorry for what I did to your community. Your apology doesn't help the families who lost their homes because of you," I said coldly. "I know. That's why I'm giving everything back." The USB drive has access to 11 offshore accounts, $11 million. It goes back to the communities I stole from. It won't fix everything, but it's something. The police cars drove away with Philip Hartford in custody. I stood in the dark park, watching the red tailets disappear into the night. Detective Martinez came and stood beside me. "Are you okay?" she asked. "I don't know," I admitted. "Part of me is relieved it's over. But another part of me is angry that it took 23 years for someone to stop him. How many families suffered because people like Gerald Thompson stayed silent? How many people lost their homes, their savings, their futures? You can't think like that. You did what others couldn't. You exposed the truth. But at what cost? My community is divided. Families aren't speaking to each other. Some people still think Karen was innocent. Others blame me for not discovering this sooner." Detective Martinez put her hand on my shoulder. "Give them time. Once they see the recovered money, once they understand the scope of what Philip did, they'll come around. You saved your community. Barbara, don't forget that." I drove home in silence. exhausted but unable to sleep. My mind kept replaying everything that had happened over the past 3 weeks. The late nights reviewing financial records, the drone flights, the confrontations, the threats, the arrests. I thought about Karen, sitting in a jail cell, probably still convinced she was the victim. I thought about Daniel and Patricia, facing prison time for their greed and desperation. I thought about Richard Chun in Arizona, whose theft had started this entire chain of corruption. And I thought about Philip Hartford, a dying man trying to make amends for 23 years of systematic theft. Was his confession genuine remorse, or just a final attempt to control his legacy? 1 week later, I stood before the entire Metabrook community at a special meeting. Every seat was filled. People stood against the walls. The same people who had attacked me on Facebook weeks ago were now applauding. Thanks to Philip Hartford's confession and the evidence he provided, the FBI has recovered $900,000 stolen from our community. That's more money than we lost. It includes interest and penalties Philip accumulated over the years. The crowd erupted in cheers. Additionally, Daniel Morrison and Patricia Rodriguez have agreed to return the $160,000 they stole. Karen Mitchell's assets are being liquidated. Between all recovery efforts, we'll have $1.2 million returned to our community fund, Mordia Plus. But I raised my hand for silence. However, I want to be clear about something. This money doesn't erase what happened. Families suffered because of these thefts. Some people lost their homes. Others struggled to pay bills when HOA dues increased to cover the missing funds. Children went without things they needed because their parents had to pay for someone else's greed. The room grew quiet. We're implementing new oversight procedures. From now on, every transaction over $500 requires 3 board member approvals. We're hiring an independent accounting firm to conduct quarterly audits. All financial records will be posted online for complete transparency. We're also requiring background checks for anyone handling community funds. Thomas stood up from the board table. Barbara, on behalf of the entire board, I want to apologize. We doubted you. We questioned your methods. Some of us even called for your resignation. You saved this community. The applause was thunderous this time. People stood. Some were crying. I saw Margaret wiping tears from her eyes. But not everyone was celebrating. I noticed several people sitting with their arms crossed, faces skeptical. Karen's sister, Michelle, glared at me from the back row. A few of Karen's close friends whispered to each other, shaking their heads. The division in our community wouldn't heal overnight. Maybe it would never fully heal. After the meeting, dozens of residents came up to thank me personally. They shook my hand. They apologized for doubting me, but I also received cold stares from others who quietly left without speaking to me. That night, I sat alone in my home office. My laptop was finally closed. The investigation was over. Justice had been served, but the cost had been enormous. The community had been torn apart. Friendships destroyed. Families divided. Some people still believed Karen had been innocent. Others blamed me for not discovering the theft sooner. My phone rang. It was Gerald Thompson, the elderly board member who had first told me about the conspiracy. Barbara, I just wanted to thank you. You did what I should have done 15 years ago. You stood up when it mattered. I couldn't have done it without you, Gerald. Yes, you could have. You're the kind of person who does the right thing, even when it's hard. Even when everyone turns against you. That's real courage. We talked for a few more minutes before saying goodbye. After I hung up, I thought about Gerald's words. Courage. Was it courage? Or was it just stubbornness? An inability to let injustice go unchallenged? I looked at the framed photos on my desk. It showed the Metabrook community at last year's summer festival. Families laughing, children playing, neighbors talking and enjoying each other's company. That's what I was fighting for. That sense of community, that feeling of belonging to something bigger than ourselves. 3 months later, Metabrook community was healing. We used the recovered money to complete all the deferred maintenance Karen's theft had prevented. New playground equipment was installed. Roads were repaved. The pool renovation that Karen had stolen from was finally finished, and it looked beautiful. The community voted to implement new financial oversight procedures. Every transaction now required 3 board approvals. Monthly audits by independent accountants became mandatory. Complete transparency with all financial records posted online for anyone to review. I walked through the community on a Saturday morning in late spring. The weather was perfect. Neighbors actually smiled and waved at me. Children played in the new playground, their laughter filling the air. The scars were still there, but we were healing. A young couple I didn't recognize stopped me on the sidewalk. "Excuse me, are you Barbara Harris?" the woman asked. "Yes, I am. We just moved here last week. We almost didn't buy a house in this community because of everything we read online about the embezzlement scandal. But then we read about how you caught the people responsible. That took real courage. We're proud to live in a community with leadership like yours." Their words meant more to me than they could know. Karen Mitchell was sentenced to 12 years in federal prison. Daniel Morrison received 8 years. Patricia Rodriguez received 5 years due to her cooperation and genuine remorse. During her sentencing, Patricia broke down crying and apologized directly to the community. She showed genuine remorse for her actions. Karen, on the other hand, showed no remorse. During her sentencing hearing, she continued to insist she was innocent and had been framed. She glared at me from across the courtroom, her hatred still burning bright. Philip Hartford died before his trial. His cancer took him exactly 93 days after his confession, but his guilty plea was recorded, and his estate was liquidated to repay victims. The FBI's investigation into his 47 managed communities revealed theft totaling $13 million. Hundreds of families across multiple states received restitution. The scandal made national news. Other HOA communities across the country began conducting their own audits, discovering similar patterns of theft. Philip's confession had exposed not just his own crimes, but a systemic problem in HOA management nationwide. New legislation was proposed to increase oversight and accountability for HOA treasurers and management companies. I stood on my balcony one evening in early summer, watching the sunset over Metabrook community. My drone sat on the table beside me, powered off, but always ready. I'd become somewhat famous in HOA circles. Other communities reached out asking for advice on financial oversight. Some wanted me to review their records. That drone had changed everything. A simple birthday gift from my nephew had become the tool that exposed a 23-year criminal conspiracy affecting thousands of families. My phone buzzed. A message from Tyler, my nephew. "Aunt Barbara, I saw the news. You used my drone to catch criminals. That's so cool. You're like a real detective. Can you teach me how to investigate crimes?" I smiled and typed back, "Just remember, Taya, always ask questions. Never accept easy answers. And when you know something is wrong, have the courage to investigate, even when everyone tells you to stop. But also remember, with great power comes great responsibility. Use technology to help people, not hurt them." Tyler responded immediately. "Is that from Spider-Man?" "Maybe," I replied, "but it's still true." The community was healing. Justice had been served, and I had learned that sometimes the most powerful weapon against corruption isn't a badge or a gun. Sometimes it's just a drone, a determined person, and the courage to ask, "Where did the money go?" I thought about everything I'd learned through this experience, about the importance of questioning authority, about the courage it takes to stand alone against popular opinion, about the price of doing what's right when everyone tells you you're wrong. But most importantly, I learned that one person really can make a difference. One person asking the right questions, one person refusing to accept easy answers, one person willing to risk everything for the truth. As I watched the sun set over our community, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't felt in months. The fight had been worth it. The sacrifices had been worth it. Our community would be stronger because of what we'd been through. And if it ever happened again, I'd be ready. Because now I knew the signs. I knew what to look for, and I had the tools and the courage to stop it. The drone sat quietly on my balcony table. A small reminder that technology, in the right hands, can be a powerful force for justice. Thank you for following Barbara's journey. Have you ever uncovered corruption or fraud in your community? Share your story in the comments. And remember, if you see something wrong, speak up. One person can make a difference.